Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rokai's Raid Guides, where today we are going over the third boss in Terrace of Endless Springs, and also by far the easiest boss, Lei Shi. Now, if you have limited time on raid release and you just want to get one heroic out of the way, this is by far the easiest one, and I highly recommend if you do no others, at least try this one on heroic. It should go down in a couple of quick pulls. That being said, let's just jump straight into raid composition. This one, it is very two healable. I want to start with that. You can absolutely two heal this fight. However, we found that three healing it made the fight completely free. So if you have the option to three heal, I highly recommend taking it. It makes this fight feel like basically a joke, like nothing at all is happening, just a loot pinata that you can knock out easily. Again, it is two healable. We actually got some testing pulls in where we two healed this fight, but never actually killed it with a two heal. It was just very, very close with some low HP wipes. So super doable. I just recommend if you have the flexibility there, just three heal it. It should die in a couple of pulls very easily. Now, as far as tanking is concerned, it's a two tank fight, DPS, same thing we've kind of been saying in these last several raids. Any mixture of DPS is going to be just fine. I would say having more ranged is always going to be a better thing, but ultimately the DPS makeup does not make too much of a difference. And with the composition out of the way, jumping straight into mechanics, the first one is called Afraid. It's something passively happening in the background that you can't do anything about. It's called Afraid. What you're going to see here is every 10% health that Lei Shi loses, she will gain an 8% spell haste or casting increase that is acting as a soft enrage. So the longer you're in this fight, the more damage, the more cast that she's going to be getting off. Nothing you can actually do about it, just something to be aware of as you progress through it. Healers, save throughput cooldowns for near the end of the fight. So tanks, the one thing that you're going to have to pay attention to is that this boss never auto attacks. Instead, it's always going to be casting something called spray. So spray is just a very quick 1 second cast that replaces melee auto attacks and has a couple of effects to it. First is it just does general damage, but not just to you, also to anybody within 2.5 yards of you. So it's very important that the tank is standing alone. Secondly, it leaves a lasting debuff that each application will increase frost damage taken by 12% for 10 seconds. So you can see the positioning here. We have Guru DK and Mal Tank just standing a couple yards apart from one another in front of the boss, and then just taunt swapping. So once that tank is taking a little bit too much damage, the off tank will taunt off of them, let the debuff fall off of the main tank after 10 seconds, and then taunt back, repeating for the entire duration of the fight. All right, with the tank and healer stuff out of the way, aka the boring bits, let's talk about the real mechanics that matter for everybody else throughout this fight. So every 30 seconds, Lei Shi will cast a random special ability, either hide or get away, and then I'll cut to each example here in just a moment, starting with hide. So hide is a very simple mechanic. The boss will cast hide, disappear, and then in order for the boss to reappear again, you must hit the boss with AoE damage. So you basically just have everybody AoE different parts of the room, and then once she is found, she'll pop right back out, refixate on the tanks, and be a targetable again. And that's it. Hide is very simple. This is one of the two things that could happen on the next special timer that you see on the screen right now. The other thing that could happen is something called get away, which is significantly more difficult and maybe even more frustrating than what hide is. So cutting over to what get away looks like. Lei Shi will teleport to the center of the room, cast Getaway, which is this pushback or winds looking effect you see right now, dealing 100k damage per second to everybody in the raid until canceled. Two important notes here. The first is that if you are fighting the winds or running against it, it reduces the amount of damage you take by 50%. And the second is the only way the mechanic ends is by dealing 4% total damage to the boss. Once you've done 4% damage, the winds will end and you'll be right back into the normal cycle of special abilities. Is an easier way to get out of this phase faster, which I'm going to talk more in detail about at the very end of the video. It's the scary fog mechanic I haven't touched on yet, but again, leaving that for the very end where I'm going to go a little bit more detail in it. For now, we're going to talk about the other added mechanic, Protect. So every 20% damage you deal to the boss, so at 80, 60, 40, and 20, Lei Shi will cast Protect. During Protect, the boss becomes immune to damage, spawns 4 animated protectors, which are CCable, and will not despawn until you kill one of them. So the way you handle this mechanic is by selecting one protector to kill, and then CCing the other 3 inactive protectors or targets that you're going to be ignoring. Now, I will say this is by far the most difficult part of the fight. If you are not very quick on CCing those protectors, they will absolutely kill anybody they come in contact with. Tanks, even if they're tanking more than one of them, are very, very likely to die. And if anybody else gets aggro on one of those elementals, they're for sure going to die as well. So if there's one thing to pay attention to throughout this entire fight, it's having very quick and organized crowd control as those elementals spawn. Second thing, it's not super useful, but just worth pointing out, is the elementals can only spawn from where you see these little bracers on the screen. I'll circle a couple of them here for you. But basically, anywhere you see these little golden rings or golden bracers is an option for where one of the ads can spawn. Now, killing these as fast as possible is key, because as soon as one protector dies, Lei Shi is now targetable again, and you can continue the fight like normal, jumping right back into the special rotation. Now, that sums up all of the important mechanics, the big things that you've seen so far: the hide, the getaway, and then the protect. So, the final piece of this entire puzzle is something called Scary Fog. Now, organizing this might seem complicated at first, but once you get two players who fully understand how it functions, it should be relatively easy. So, what is Scary Fog? Essentially, it's just a dot on anybody who is standing outside this outer ring. You can kind of see it now. It's like a shadowy ring outside of the boss's like 20 or 30-yard range from him. Anybody who is standing outside of that ring when a cast of Scary Fog goes off will get one application or one stack of this debuff. It does 4,000 damage per second for 35 seconds, and it also stacks. So for example, if you have 10 stacks of Scary Fog, you're taking 40k damage per second, and also you're taking 10% more damage from all sources. So this also stacks. So in that case, you would be taking 100% extra damage from all sources. Now, the important part about this is that this also impacts anybody standing within that circle. So you can see on the outer edge of the room right now, we have our Warlock who has a smaller swirly around him. Anybody who's standing in that circle takes that increased damage, both friendly targets but also enemy targets. So the way you actually cheese this boss a little bit is by intentionally stacking several stacks of Scary Fog. We recommend kind of maxing out at 10 on one of your players, and then bringing that damage amp onto the boss, and then rotating that between two players. In this pool, you can see we have it on one of our Warlocks, and again on a second Warlock as well. Any two ranged players will work, and we have them alternating bringing this damage buff onto the boss or onto the ads. So for example, the getaway mechanic we talked about earlier, what we would do is we would have as many stacks as possible while still making them a healable target, not just instantly fall over and die, on one of those Warlocks. Let's say, for example, 6 or 7 stacks of the buff. Then, right before Getaway is about to cast, we have them step into melee range, make sure that small shadowy circle underneath their feet has the boss inside of that. That will then have the boss taking 10, 20, 30, 40% more damage, equivalent to how many stacks you have, and making getting out of each of those phases infinitely easier. So again, just a quick example. Let's say Getaway happens, your Warlock happens to have 5 stacks on them. They bring that debuff over to the boss is going to take 50% extra damage, right? Or 100% extra damage if they have 10 stacks, and so on. So the important part of this fight is actually being able to juggle the damage taken between two of your ranged players. For us, we found pretty much going over 7 to 10 stacks was your sweet spot, where you would then want your stacks to fall off and then start refreshing them and alternating between two players. My screen, you can actually see the weak aura tracking how many stacks each of our Warlocks has. So we have Vivid Lock with 9 stacks currently. He is now bringing that damage amp underneath the protector that we're going to be killing. Hopefully you can see him in the center of the room right here. And then we lift Nova, our other Warlock, on the outside of this ring to refresh his stacks. So we now intentionally let Vivid reset his stacks. You can see they have now fallen off. And then we're going to have Nova, our other Warlock, continue to refresh. And then by the time the next important mechanic happens, whether that's Getaway or Protect, we will have stacks available to bring into that specific boss or add to kill them quickly. Now, the final piece of all of this massive puzzle is you can see each time hide happens, it's going to be very likely that every single player in the raid is going to be outside of that little shawl looking circle that Lei Shi has around them, and will probably get 1 stack of Scary Fog. You can see it happens many times throughout this entire fight. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. Obviously, you try to stay close the entire time. In the case that you have maybe everybody in the raid with this debuff on them, remember that only one stack of it does very little damage. It's like 4k damage per second, so the healing for it is not too bad at all. The important part is that you remain spread. So those small circles amplify the amount of damage you and anybody in it takes. Make sure you're not all stacked because that damage amp would get out of control. Even melee, just make sure you're not standing in somebody else's circle. Maintain a light spread until the debuff falls off, and there won't be too much to worry about. The main focus, again, is going to be those two range players that you assign to intentionally carry the stacks. So one more quick example. Nova / Vivid Lock, they're at 6 and 8 stacks respectively. We brought Vivid into melee. He is now going to stand underneath one of these protectors. That will be the target that we choose to kill because he'll be taking 80 or 90% increased damage. Meanwhile, we leave Nova Lock here on the green marker outside of the room intentionally to maintain his stacks so that we can bring that damage amp onto the boss afterwards. Vivid is now going to step out, start getting new stacks since his debuff has just fallen off. Nova now staying on top of the boss with 110% damage increase, making it extremely easy to end this knockback very, very fast. So let's recap the basics. Every 10% HP that the boss loses, she will gain 8% casting speed, which in effect is a soft enrage that's always just going to be in effect. Healers save cooldowns for the end of the fight. Second, you have a special ability every 30 to 45 seconds. It will either be Hide or Get Away. Hide is the one where the boss disappears off the map and must be AoE'd to be targetable again. The other one is Get Away. The boss goes into the center of the room, does a pushback effect that you will want to run against to reduce the damage taken by 50%, and will need to do 4% of her HP in order to end the mechanic. And lastly, every 20% damage dealt to the boss, she will do Protect, going immune and spawning the 4 elementals that you see on the map right now. Reminder, CC 3 of them very quickly. They will kill you so fast if you're not paying attention. You're going to want to Fear, Bind Elemental, Stun, anything you can to make sure they do not hit any other target, and kill one of those by using the damage amp underneath them. That covers all the main mechanics. One more reminder, the balancing act of this fight is having 2 strong ranged DPS players juggle those stacks of scary fog and make sure that you just keep a good amount of damage amp on the boss. Don't put too much pressure on yourselves. If you don't always do this part perfectly, it is completely okay. It is not going to be the end of the world. You can see here on this kill, with even using the 3 healer strat, we have tons of time left on the Berserk. It's not going to be too close at all. Slow and steady wins the race. Pay attention. Don't have any silly deaths for the elementals not getting CC'd. Don't let scary fog stacks get too high on one single target, and the boss will go down really, really quickly. Thanks everybody for the support on the last several guides. I've loved to hear your feedback. If you have any more for me, leave them in the comments down below. If you have questions, drop them there as well. And one more reminder, I do not have a Shaw of Fear kill from testing as we didn't get around to it. So that guide will come out as soon as we're able to take it down when the raid releases on Thursday. Until then, enjoy this loot pinata of a boss, and we'll see you in the next one.